Okay, so now we are going to start looking at a few solutions. So you can call them solutions, but they will not get rid of climate change as such. So we'll start trying to understand how far we have come since the Industrial Revolution. We already said many times the ppm of CO2 in the atmosphere used to be around 280, and now we are at 420 something. Temperature has warmed by 1.4 degrees centigrade or so. Sea level has risen by a few centimeters, and vegetation, desertification, heavy rainfalls, and so on and so forth. Ocean acidification. So this chapter called hydrogen and insect burgers. If you're not a carnivore or somebody who eats non-vegetarian food, meat and such, then you don't have to worry about it. But if you are a vegetarian, you're already doing something for the environment in terms of eating foods that have a lesser footprint or lesser emission into the atmosphere. But you could be doing other things. You could be traveling too much, driving too much, flying too much, and so on and so forth. So we cannot blame people for eating meat. That's what I meant. Here we will read that it could get a lot worse if we continue this way, and the advantages of floating houses that could help us in a warmer world, and how you can help. Again, the idea is not to feel guilty about what you are doing or not doing, but to just be careful about what you're doing and what you can avoid doing if it's not good for the environment. And we'll see how a strawberry makes its mark. What do we mean by that? We'll see why planes sometimes smell like snack bars. Everybody is opening up their little snack on the plane as the food comes by, and everybody is eating, and then soon the entire plane is smelling like a vending machine. Well, actually vending machine is closed up, but a snack bar is a better example. Why exhaust pipes are becoming a thing of the past. That's a good thing, because we said exhaust pipes are putting out a lot of greenhouse gases. So in short, we will see what the measures are to tackle climate change. So after all that bad news, sad news, depressing news, we'll see some solutions. But first we'll start by looking at what we know. Okay, so this is what we know, kids. Since the Industrial Revolution, more and more CO2 has been released into the air, and the temperature has gone up by about 1.4 degrees by now. This is super quick when you compare it to earlier changes we have already looked at. You know that this century the average temperature will rise by another 1 to 5 degrees if we do not do much. 5 degrees if we can do something, maybe 1 degree. This will change climate, of course, and storms will become more severe, showers will become more intense, heat waves will last longer, or maybe your region will get drier, and sea level will rise by 40 to 80 centimeters in the global mean. But you have to see whether it's rising in your neighborhood or not. It's not uniformly rising, as we said. So these predictions are from the 2014 report by the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which sits under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Every few years, every 7 years or so, they put out a big report, as we saw before, and the last one in fact came out in 2021. Because of COVID there were some issues, but this book was published by them, so this is referring to the 2014 report, which was before the one that came out in 2021. In the next assessment report, which is coming out in 2022, by the time we are reading it, it's already come out. The predictions will no doubt be more accurate. Well, in some sense they are, or at least our confidence in the results we are getting from the models and the observations, the data, the confidences are higher. There are indicators that the sea level in particular could rise faster, up to 1 or 2 meters by 2100. It is rising faster, but it is tremendously difficult to say what will happen by 2100, because it depends a lot on what we do from now to 2100. There is also a possibility that the global warming has been underestimated. Let's not worry about that right now. So it's like this though. Together with CO2, all kinds of small particles are pumped into the air which block the sunlight, a bit like a volcanic eruption that we talked about, and we call it a solar dimming. Right? If we burn less coal and so on, fewer particles will be released into the air and the sun can warm up the earth even more, which means right now we may not be as warm because of all the pollution which is blocking the sunlight, but if we clean up the air, maybe the warming will increase, at least in the beginning, but health will get better, so don't worry about that. Global warming could then happen even more quickly when we make the atmosphere cleaner. Countries that are tackling air pollution are already noticing that locally it can get warmer. Climate change has consequences for people we looked at, animals that we talked about, and plants, of course, and poor people will suffer those consequences more than the rich people, because rich people are sitting, let's say, in the north, somewhere in the North America and Europe, and emitted all this CO2 that's been accumulating and accumulating over time since industrial revolution, and the bad things are happening everywhere, especially in the tropics where all the poor people tend to live. Right? Animals and plants that have difficulty in adapting or relocating will suffer more than animals and plants that are more flexible, as we said already with examples. Because life on our planet is connected by food chains, cycles, and food webs, all the consequences have other consequences which also have consequences with their own consequences, and it becomes difficult to predict. Okay, the consequences that we are seeing in the world now are just the beginning. One nasty habit of CO2 is that it takes hundreds of years to disappear. So it's just the CO2 we produced in 1850 is still hanging around, so we are just adding on top. So today we are dealing not only with the CO2 that was emitted yesterday or just now, but also in the past centuries. Just imagine all the CO2 from all the factories that exist now and that have ever existed, plus all the cars, plus all the power stations, plus all the planes, plus all the rockets, plus all the trips that your grandma took on steam trains, and there is more CO2 being added every day. That means that your children and their children will suffer because of the CO2 we are emitting today. I'm older, so I've already emitted so much CO2 that your future is already affected by my CO2, and that's why, more than in the days of the steam train, we are accumulating more and more CO2. But that's what is happened, that's what we know, but what can we do about it? There are two sorts of measures when we want to do something. We can combat the consequences of what's already happening, and we can also tackle the causes of the greenhouse gas emissions and what is happening. Both are expensive and complicated. By combating the consequences, we are preparing for the future. We are managing things that are going to happen and bad things that are going to happen. By tackling the causes, we are trying to reduce the consequences. You understand? We are trying to reduce the consequences by reducing our emissions, but we are also trying to adjust and adapt to what's already happening and what is expected to happen. So we're trying to limit global warming, and we're trying to adjust to the global warming that's already happening and will continue to happen. So here we have CO2 plus minus 411, but actually it's well over 425 now. Sea level is about 25 centimeters above. By 2018 it was 25 centimeters above 1850, and temperature plus minus 14.5 degrees C from where it was in 2100. But before you go there, you compare to 1850 in CO2 in CO2 in 1850 was about 285 ppm. We jumped to 411, and we may jump to 1,000, 800, 900 by 2100. It does depend on what we do. Sea level was zero at the time, means that's what we considered zero as the baseline, as we say. So when you grow, how old you are counted from the time you are born. The day you are born, your clock starts ticking, right? and that's what we mean here. The clock started ticking in 1850. Temperature at that time was plus minus little bit 13.5 degrees centigrade, and now we are over 14.67 degrees centigrade. And if we do nothing, if we keep increasing CO2 500, 600, 700, 8, 9,000, sea level can go up by up to 40 centimeters, maybe to 100 centimeters, and temperatures can go to 15.5 degrees centigrade, or in the worst case even 19.5 degrees centigrade, which would be horrendously bad for the glaciers, for the sea level, for the storms, and for the plants and animals that we talked about, and for our own selves as well. So how do we get ready for the future? We'll come back and discuss that. I have to run to a meeting now, so see you in the next podcast, children. Bye bye.